Football on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by William Hill. Download the app and play today. 18 plus gamblingcare.ie.
This is News Talk.
Hello and welcome back to Off the Ball Sunday. Don't forget to get your WhatsApps into us at 0879 180 180. Just to give you a quick score update, Arsenal are now 4-1 up against Portsmouth and Martinelli has his hat-trick. So we'll keep an eye on that during the rest of the segment. But first, I am delighted to say that we have former Irish international Louise Quinn on the line.
Hi guys, how are you?
Hiya Louise, how are you? How was your Christmas and your New Year period?
It was very nice, yeah. Very different. Obviously not having to do any training. Just lots of family time. Spent 9-10 days on the bounce in Ireland over kind of just after Christmas and New Year. So yeah, a nice change.
Certainly probably a more relaxing Christmas than kind of heading and looking into January for the return of the WSL fixtures. But that's what we had this weekend so far. So I'll just give a rundown of the results that we've had so far. We've had Arsenal 0, Man United 0. That was yesterday. Then today, Chelsea beat West Ham 5-0. Tottenham bet Leicester City 1-0. Aston Villa bet Brighton and Hove Albion 2-1. Manchester City bet Everton 2-0. And then the Liverpool versus London City Lionesses game is kicking off.
Kicked off at half two.
So I kind of want to start with Arsenal, Louise, because, listen, it wasn't maybe the most exciting game in the world, that 0-0. And I think you'll probably pretty much have to say that Arsenal are looking at this as 2 points dropped.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at in terms of just their dominance in the game, obviously a red card in the 65th minute, I think, for one of the United players, and it's trying to take advantage when they are on the up, and you can see Chelsea again, obviously recently, have dropped points, but you never write them off, and obviously City with a very dominant 2-0 win over Everton. So again, it's really frustrating for them, and they know it. I think it's kind of been the story of their season, not taking advantage of strong performances or putting them away, even when they, potentially hasn't been their most exciting football this season. However, they've, mostly been dominant in most games, and, they need to take advantage of that and gain that momentum in terms of especially putting chances away.
Louise, I know we talked about this a little bit before, but obviously with the news that Sleggers is staying on for another couple of years, I don't think a lot of fans potentially expected that news to come this season with the way things were going. Obviously, she has a lot of credit in the bank because of the Champions League win, which I don't think anyone had really predicted was going to come last season. But in terms of this season and the way the squad has set up, it still feels to me like she doesn't know exactly what her best starting team is, and also what it is per game. Because obviously, you're depending on what sort of side you're going to play, you're going to change things up a little bit. Do you think there's a world where, because of having that such immediate success and bringing, such a historic title back to the club, that there's a bit of second guessing herself this season and maybe not having the time as well to settle into the role, because everyone's eyes are on the team so much because of that win?
Yeah, I think so. I think listen, as you say, she has a lot of credit. I think it's, some things where I still think, potentially the game plan is still positive. Listen, they're not doing dreadful, but they're not doing as well as, Arsenal fans and, potentially other teams, other fans.
Would you not say for an Arsenal side, though, to be 10 points off the City at the moment, is that not the sort of terrible that you should be? If you have, I suppose, ambition for the club, you would consider it pretty terrible at this stage.
Yeah, I guess when you're putting it into numbers, yes. And in terms of their, in their position, I feel like they can still always creep up and, get themselves into that Champions League position again. But I suppose these things, and I think the success she has had, I still think time is good for her and good for them. there's that fine balance. I've seen, you're obviously talking about the men's games. There's, seconds left, right and centre at the moment, especially this time of year. And I just think, again, I think she deserves that time personally. Listen, I'm, nowhere in the camp, don't know how the players feel, don't know, that sort of position. However, she has the capability and the ability to go and, pick Arsenal up out of, where they are right now. And, but is it a thing at the moment? Because, you look at, there hasn't been a, real consistent starting 11. And that is very difficult when you look at the 11 and then you look at players on the, on the bench as well. Beth Mead is, in, out, like the amount of wingers. You have Olivia Smith, who's just been brought in. Sometimes that then puts Caitlin Ford to the bench. And it's just about finding that balance. Is it something where it's also, she may need to be a bit more cutthroat and just stick with, a little bit more of a consistent 11? Or, is it maybe trying to keep players happy, but again, it doesn't bring that kind of cohesion and kind of consistent performance in the games, really.
I suppose that the good news, if you can take any from that game, is that Leah Williamson is back now after a spell injured. Will that bring a bit more stability? Kind of, is that what the team is perhaps lacking? Like, they're not doing terribly. They're unbeaten since November 12th. Admittedly, that takes into account the long winter break.
There was about a month off there.
And unbeaten in the league since October 4th. But is it stability that they're missing? Is it kind of a bit of bite? Is it a hangover maybe from the Champions League?
Yeah, I think you can put all of those elements in. I think having Leah back is, of course, beneficial in terms of everything positional wise. You want your, centre backs to be, you want that consistent. If you ever want a partnership, that is the one, a centre back partnership. And so having Leah back will be massive. She's clearly a leader. Again, the fans love her. It really just brings, she is Miss Arsenal. So to kind of have her back in there, yes, will hopefully bring stability. And again, it's just about in terms of how her fitness is, how, she gets herself back up and running. But again, it's just trying to, for me, is it now just to cement a little bit more of that 11, and keep, especially keep someone like Leah, injury free. And obviously, there has been some goalkeeper issues of late as well. So again, it's just, it's a mixed bag really, isn't it? It's, if your attackers aren't putting the goals in, defensively you feel a little bit more pressure. But obviously if you're defensively not as solid, your strikers feel like, oh God, it's all up to us. It's a real fine and mixed balance. And it's just about, for them, just getting that right. And listen, I think in time, but for me, I think overall, I think giving Slegers a new contract may just bring that balance. Is it now a time to shake things up and bring in a new manager? I don't know. I think potentially just a little bit more stability, performance-wise as well. From the team, players obviously have to look at themselves as well. It can't be, absolutely put on the coach at all times.
Yeah, to be fair, I wouldn't actually advocate to get rid of Slegers at this stage either. I was just surprised at the length of the deal, I think, as well. Like 2029 is quite a long time. And especially in women's football, we're seeing it a bit more now, but we are used to more kind of 1-2 year contracts. So that was kind of the thing that surprised me at this particular point. But I'm always a massive advocate for, you need to give managers at least 2 seasons if they're going to properly develop a team and change a team and make it their team rather than, Ada Val's team that she inherited, because you need a full season, you need at least 2 transfer windows and a lot of other things, unless things go absolutely ridiculously awful, which obviously happens every so often. But I think as a standard, and I would say that for Premier League teams as well, Louise, on the other side of that game, you do have Manchester United, and we've seen them this season come into their own a lot more, dropping off a little bit now towards the middle of the season, but still in contention there with a relatively small squad as well. I thought that you were going to see them bring in some bigger players in the January window, and they've gone and they have actually done that, which is surprising for this Manchester United team, because often they're a little bit forgotten by the hierarchy. But how do you think Mark Skinner and the squad are feeling going into this second half of the season?
I still think a little bit of their form in the league is a bit of a mixed bag. I think Champions League, I think they've had a brilliant, quite a good run. And, picking up confidence, everything from there. And then, they've made some very nice signings in terms of obviously the Jess Park, Grace Clinton swap. And Jess Park, I think, has been, absolutely brilliant for them. I think you have Rolfo, who brings so much experience, but again, sometimes she hasn't, it hasn't totally clicked for her. But again, I can still see United are building a nice squad. I think Mark Skinner as well is the longest serving, coach in the WSL at the moment. And I think he's just, he's had, I can't even remember how long he's been in there for, but, in terms of having that trust in him. And I think now they're starting to get a bit of that, bit of financial support in terms of wanting to sign these players that they're trying to get in. So for me, I'm still, you still want more from United there. I think I did coverage of a game against them against Aston Villa just, a couple of months ago now, but in moments where they, have a 3-game week, I think they had Champions League that week again, they just found it really difficult to then find that breakthrough or bring that spark. They looked a bit leggy. So again, for me, I think it's just consistency. And again, for me to keep pushing and challenging in this league title, because again, it always seems to be the same 3, but United are, they're pushing. I think they can always bring a little bit more. I think that's potentially just how is it just the feeling of Man United as a club, as a whole at the moment? But for me, I think, with some of their, their signings they've brought in, for me, hopefully now it'll just pick up again in the second half of the season, and they'll start challenging again a bit more.
Who do you think are or what do you think are the biggest stories that's going to come from the second half of the season? Who should we be looking at? Who's in danger? And I suppose who are any dark horses that might be pushing for a European space?
I still think in terms of European spots, we're still going to, it's going to be a similar sort of top 4. I think, Tottenham have kind of pushed again a little bit this season, but then, I think in terms of top of the table, I think it's more potentially just, Man City pushing on with what they're doing and how they're, going about their business. And again, in terms of their results, you see Bunny Shaw linking up with Viv Miedema, and that's
the most terrifying combo in the world.
And just to keep, Miedema fit. And I think she is starting to get back to, her best at the moment. She's constantly linking play. I think she's quietly kind of kept her head down actually for the last while. I know she's, coming back from injuries, but again, she's just going about her business really, really well. And then the same with Bunny Shaw after, some spells out. So for me, I think it's, are Man City just going to constantly keep checking their shoulder, or can they just look ahead, finish strong? But that's where, Chelsea, you can just never, ever write them off. And they pounce on the weakness of a draw or a loss, and they just pounce on teams. And then bottom half of the table, listen, it's just been really difficult to see, I think, Liverpool struggling as much as they are. you know, I am a Liverpool fan, and I want to, you know, see them do well. And they have, you know, in terms of track record, a very good manager. They have very good players, but again, I'm not sure if it's just, you know, they have no luck this year. If it's in terms of their cohesion, I know that Gareth Taylor wanted to change up, you know, how they play quite a bit to his style of play, which is obviously, you know, a lot more possession based. And again, some goalkeeping issues there so they've just now brought in Swedish international Falk again, who is a very, very good goalkeeper. So again, I think having that stability in the back, you know, pair of safe hands, hopefully it might, you know, help turn their season around.
I think it's interesting, you know, we were talking earlier, Louise, about Macclesfield and the success that they had yesterday, and you look at a team like London City Lionesses that have come into the league. They're the only ones not associated with men's Premier League or big club, and one of the few that have been in there over the last couple of years. And, you know, we talk about it a bit on the Koi Gig podcast with Karen Duggan and Scarlett Heron, but they've brought a bit of chaos to the league. You know, there's a lot of vibes, I think, would be the best way to do it, where they score a lot of goals but they let in a lot of goals. Yes. But they've still managed to get themselves up to 7th place. And if it is Liverpool that are relegated this season, and like there's a very, very strong possibility of that, they're on 3 points at the moment. West Ham are just above them on 5. You know, it says a lot about a club that would let their team drop that far in the league when you are part of a club as big as Liverpool. You know, the fact that Kang has come in and done everything that she has with London City Lionesses and other teams across Europe and the States, it just shows what a little bit of an injection of money can do to help a side. And I think if this is to happen this season, people should be outraged, whether you're a Liverpool supporter or not. If you're just a fan of the game, you should be outraged, because the size of the squad that this Liverpool team has is not the size of a squad that a team of its calibre should be. The investment that's gone in is not there. You know, they've had their own tragedies this season as well, which I'm sure are also affecting the squad in the same way that the men's side has. And I'm sure it's been an incredibly difficult time for everyone across the club. But this would be the biggest outrage that's happened in the WSL, I think, over the last couple of seasons, if Liverpool are allowed to be relegated. And I've been shocked that there hasn't been more thrown at it in the January transfer window so far. Maybe it's still open, obviously, for another couple of weeks, so maybe that will come. But for me, looking ahead to the next couple of months until May, when the league ends, it's not really who wins the league. I think City are going to storm it at this stage, but I think Liverpool getting relegated, that will be absolutely outrageous and a real disappointment for Liverpool and its fans.
I don't think it's a great look for the WSL either. I think you need to have, you know, it's great to have your teams like London City Lionesses in, but you also need to have your, you know, big teams that have the kind of, there's no reason why a team like Liverpool can't have the sort of support that other, you know, like Arsenal are consistently, obviously, the most well-supported women's team in Europe. They've done that, you know, they've taken years to build this and it's doing very well. But you look at the following that Liverpool has across Ireland, especially across the UK, they could be doing, I think, a lot more. To segue slightly in the last kind of 5 minutes or so that we have here to talk about Ireland and looking ahead, obviously the 2027 World Cup qualifiers begin in March. So many WSL teams have a strong kind of Irish contingent. Looking ahead now, first of all, I guess, Louise, you know firsthand yourself what the pressure is like when you're entering into a qualification campaign like that. What are these girls what do they need to do in the next kind of 2 months to prepare themselves for this?
Yeah, I just think it's, you know, these sort of preparations, obviously, listen, it's about playing, it's about getting game time, it's about obviously then, you know, staying injury free and, you know, mentally putting yourself just in a good position. And again, it's, you know, you could be playing for your club. That doesn't guarantee you're going to, you know, get your game time for the Irish team. And it's just knowing, you know, that fine balance. And obviously if you're in the squad,
Yeah, so we just lost Louise there for a second. But I mean, looking ahead to the World Cup qualifiers, you've Casey McCabe at Arsenal. you have kind of a stalwart of we know that she's going to produce quality for her club, and we know she's going to produce quality for her country. But you're looking at some of maybe the younger players, certainly the players who weren't around at the last World Cup. Missing out on the European Championships obviously was devastating.
Devastating, yeah.
So you have a lot of players who haven't kind of been through that before. And I think, do we have Louise back with us? We do.
Yeah, yes, should do, yeah.
So what will the mentality be like coming into this next couple of months?
Yeah, again, I think it's just important in terms of the girls, you know, to be getting as much game time or whatever game time they are getting with their clubs to, you know, use it to their advantage. I think for me, it was any time I was playing club, you know, the Irish team was constantly in the, you know, not even the back of my mind, you know, right there by club. Okay, what can I do here? How does, you know, some of these games, you know, correlate how we're going to be setting up, you know, with the national team. So for me, it's, you know, in terms of the girls obviously getting as much game time as possible. And listen, that's, you know, it's down to them, but obviously it's out of their power. But again, you know, once they're just coming into the squad, knowing the role they have in the squad, you know, because every player is so important, and that's, you know, that's been the same all the years that I've been there. You know, every member that comes into that Irish team is, you know, is as important as the next. And yeah, but listen, game time, fitness, you know, the mental side of the game, and again, bringing ourselves in to go play, you know, some top teams and building momentum through that group stage, I think will be, again, really, really important. You know, we've got some high flyers in terms of facing France, Netherlands, and then Poland, who just aren't too dissimilar to ourselves at all in terms of, you know, potentially being the underdog, getting to their first Euros qualifier or Euros tournament this year. Yeah, so for me, it's just, yeah, making sure the girls just stay fit, healthy, and come in and then know their role as soon as they get into Carla Ward's squad.
Exactly. And just to update people on the FA Cup action, it is full time now between Portsmouth and Arsenal. Arsenal winning 4-1 in the end. And then another Premier League club in action, West Ham, are currently 1-0 up against QPR. They scored, I was about to say just before halftime, but they scored at 45 plus 10. So we'll have to look back at that and see what exactly happened. But for, I suppose, kind of lastly, Louise, you've been to a World Cup, you've had those big moments. What, I suppose, if you're talking to any of the girls, I'm sure you will be over the next little while, like, how important, or not important is perhaps the wrong word, what does it mean to represent your country in that kind of manner of competition?
Yeah, listen, it is incredibly, is it hard to describe? It is just this overwhelming, you know, that moment of qualification against Scotland is, you know, the best feeling that you know, that I've ever had on a pitch. And it's, you know, just pure elation. You're just looking around the pitch at your friends, your teammates, your everyone, and it just feels like, you know, everything you've now done. First of all, you know, you think like that. First, your dream has come through. Your dream has come true, and then you look around and you see that you've done it for your teammates, and you're like, you know, we've done it for the country right now. We've made history, and yeah, listen, if you can bottle it up and do that, it still gives me chills. But again, it's just about, you know, going out there, expressing yourselves, being yourselves, knowing why we do it, and, you know, the country that we do it for. And, you know, through the years, that's, you know, that's been enough for us in terms of some of that will, and then, you know, everyone else doing exactly what they need to do outside of the that Irish camp. But yeah, listen, that's a hard question, but it's also quite easy. How do you describe just, you know, one of the greatest feelings in in a sporting perspective that you can have, because people were involved and it was about the people who you were doing it for and who you were doing it with. So I think that's kind of where it comes from.
All right, listen, Louise, thank you very much for chatting to us this afternoon. Just to update you on one more FA Cup event, West Ham star Mavropanos has been stretchered off with what seems to be a worrying injury, a head or neck injury, during their clash with QPR. So hopefully we'll get some good news on that soon. Louise has left us. That was a lovely chat with her. And that means we are out of time here. But don't go anywhere, as Rachel Sheehan will bring us all the GAA action next with Sarah O'Donovan after the news.
Keep up with